After UKIP's triumph, has British politics changed decisively, or is this just another protest bubble about to burst? The UKIP leader celebrated poll success in his usual style, but as he takes his band of 24 MEPs to Brussels and prepares for next May's general election, voters may be asking, is this a brilliant tactician or simply a comic populist? But apart from being anti-immigration and anti-Brussels, what is the party actually for? I'll be talking to Nigel Farage about taxes, gay rights, housing, schools and welfare, and in his first major television interview since those results, where he plans to take his insurgency next. The UKIP fox is in the Westminster henhouse. Nigel Farage's typically colourful response to the recent local and European elections is not, however, quite true, because UKIP doesn't yet have any common seats. But that is, of course, their aim. With the general election less than a year away, the by-elections in between. Mr Farage is with me now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's start with the position of the party generally. This is your first interview since those elections. Are you confident that you can go on and claim a clutch of MPs in the House of Commons, sufficient perhaps, given our fragmented politics, to have real influence?
Yes, I am. I think the European election results caught the news, but actually the more significant result for next year was that in the areas where we succeeded last year, winning county council seats, where there were district council elections there as well, this year we're seeing areas where we're building up a really good representation of UKIP through local government, and that changes the whole perception in a constituency. And this is exactly what your previous guest today, Paddy Ashdown, did in the 1990s. They built on local strength. So our strategy for the general election next year is we will pick, over the course of this summer, our target seats, and we'll throw the kitchen sink at those seats.
And you've got some money and so forth. Do you have any idea how many of those kitchen sink seats there are going to be?
Not just yet, no, but, you know, it'll be 2 dozen, 3 dozen, I mean, something of that order, you know, where we really think that we can say to the electorate, look, you know, we've topped the polls in the Europeans, we're winning council seats, we're on the up, you know, we are the challenger here.
We're in a very strange position at the moment in terms of the polls. You look at the Tories, you look at Labour and so forth, and it doesn't yet seem that anyone is in a commanding position to have an overall majority at the next election, which in due course suggests that a party like yours, possibly with others, who knows, could have real influence.
Yeah.
That means that we have to know much more, don't we, about your policies that go beyond immigration and beyond... And you've always said
that's fair
you're
enough.
going to come to them.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I've tried to fight the European elections on European issues. Now, I know that nobody else wanted to discuss any of this stuff, and when we tried to talk about open-door immigration, all we got was abuse hurled at us, rather than a proper engaged debate. But that's over.
Exactly.
That's done, and I accept that fully. And we are going to have our annual conference this year in Doncaster, in Ed Miliband's constituency, and that is where we will lay out our manifesto for the 2015 general election.
But for those people wanting a sort of sense of where you are, you've always praised Margaret Thatcher hugely. Are you going to be essentially a new Thatcherite party? Is that where you're trying to go?
No, because that was of its time. You know, I mean, Thatcherism was of its time 40 years ago to deal with a specific set of problems. You know, for half the country, it benefited them. For the other half of the country, it didn't. But now the problem...
But it had enduring policies and policy ideas, lower tax, grammar schools and so forth.
All of which have now gone. All of which have now gone. I mean,
so do you want to bring them back, is my question?
I tell you what I want us to do. I want us to give millions of ordinary families and people in this country the opportunity to live a better life and to do better, because at the moment we are seeing the gap between those who are wealthy enough to be privately educated and the rest getting wider, and we're seeing the working population working longer and longer hours, having suffered huge wage compression over the course of the last 10 years, with their household bills going up. So what we want to do actually is to genuinely address the cost of living and to address social mobility in Britain.
You've been with UKIP since the beginning, and one of its policies has been a flat rate of tax of 31%. Is that still a policy?
No, we're going to rethink the tax thing. You know, I mean, I think that...
Okay, well, let's just...
I think that that was badly explained. Because people thought, gosh, they're going to put tax up for the low paid. Well, no, the idea was to abolish national insurance. What I can tell you for certain is that our biggest tax objective in that next manifesto will be no tax on the minimum wage. We've got to incentivise people to get off benefit and to get back to work. Now, that obviously will cost money.
That will cost money.
That will cost money.
Does that mean that you can't promise tax cuts to the better off, for instance?
I think a top rate of tax in this country of around about 40% is the one that will bring the most revenue into the exchequer. And I think through the 80s and 90s, we saw that.
40% top rate of tax?
I think that's what we will conclude, yes. Anything over 40, and you start to see people going overseas. But really, what we've got to worry about actually are the millions of people there on low pay, and frankly, without sufficient incentives to be in work.
Grammar school in every town?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, as I've said already in this interview, the lack of social mobility in Britain, frankly, is quite shaming. And I think that selective education is one of the ways to give bright kids from poor backgrounds a real opportunity.
The welfare state is too big. You've said that in the past. Yeah. Getting it smaller is a very difficult prospect for the Conservative government, for any government, really. What are your ideas about
Well, I mean, since 1997, there has been an absolute boom in the public sector in this country for middle managers and above. Vast numbers of people throughout local government and throughout the health service and elsewhere earning six-figure money on 2/3 final salary. And there's no question, the Labour Party increased our spending on public services, but we finished up actually without better delivery, and we finished up with a whole new layer, a whole new class of public servants who've done incredibly well.
So you're going to take a chainsaw through the middle management?
I think that's exactly what we need.
Civil service.
Yes, I do. I mean, just recently, my mother was in hospital for a month, in a London hospital, and I looked at the nurses and doctors working on those wards and thought, actually, they're being given way too much to do. Something is going wrong here.
You have said, haven't you, that you're going to put a ring fence around the NHS. You're going to remove the ring fence around the NHS and therefore spend less on the NHS. You can't promise better services.
Not necessarily. I mean, what we've got to do clearly is reprioritise what the NHS does. As I say, personal experience, of a parent being sick in hospital and seeing a nursing staff were frankly seriously undermanned, whilst at the same time vast sums of money being paid back on PFI deals and this over 40% growth in middle management.
The Conservatives say that you're offering something for nothing. You're offering lower taxes, milk and honey, better public services. It just doesn't add up. And that you haven't been put under proper scrutiny.
Well, one thing for certain is the Conservatives' public finances don't add up, because here we are nearing the end of this Parliament when they said the budget deficit will be back to even Steven, and actually we're still borrowing £100 billion more a year than we're earning. So,
we're not here to talk about
I don't think criticism from them is particularly good. But what we have to do, Andrew, is we have to outline where savings can be made. There's no question about that.
What about all of those people who might be watching this and think, yes, I agree with that, but I'm gay or I've got a brown skin and I don't feel comfortable with these people? In the end, I've had too many hints and wolf whistles from UKIP candidates, and I just don't feel comfortable about gay rights, about the liberal attitude of the country.
I mean, come on. We posed a big threat to three established parties, and they clubbed together and did everything they could to throw mud at us and to abuse us in the last 3 weeks of that European election campaign.
You gave them a lot of mud to throw.
Well, I don't think we really did, to be honest with you. I mean, when you think that during that campaign there were 17 Liberal, Labour and Conservative councillors who were actually arrested during the campaign, and yet that made no news at all. I did, on the 7th of May, in London, we had a rally, and I invited the black and ethnic minority candidates who were standing for UKIP in the local elections and in the European elections to come and join me on the stage. And there was a most incredible atmosphere and feeling of togetherness, and a feeling that
gay people?
And that here is a party that represents the Commonwealth and believes in the Commonwealth. And, we've got more black and ethnic minority voters now than the Conservative Party, and yet that message did not get out.
What about gay people? Are they welcome in UKIP?
Well, we've just had a gay person elected as one of our MEPs. I think that that answers the question. This attempt to try and paint UKIP out to be a bunch of old men, deeply intolerant of the world, frankly, does not bear the truth.
You now have to go into Europe, and your MEPs are going to have to behave, if I may say so, a bit differently than MEPs in the last European Parliament.
I couldn't agree more.
Not many votes, including from yourself, actually. Are you going to be acting as a group, actually trying to change things in the European Parliament, turning up for those votes and not jumping out of the party?
Yeah, of course we're going to be there and taking part in votes, and we will have some members very actively involved in committees. But we're not going to delude ourselves or try and deceive the British public that anything can be changed. I was back there on Tuesday. I went to a meeting on Tuesday, the Conference of Presidents of the European Parliament. Mr. Schulz in the chair, one of the runners and riders to be Commission President, and the leaders of the Christian Democrats, the leaders of the Socialists, the Greens, all the big political families in Europe represented in that room. And it's perfectly clear to me that whatever results we saw, it is business as usual.
Why are you not going into alliance with the French National Front?
Well, I don't want to. They come from a different political family. And whilst I think Marine Le Pen has taken a very different position to her father, I think that party, it still has Jean-Marie Le Pen in it, and you might have seen, just a few days before the European elections, he made a comment about the Ebola virus, and we just want nothing to do with that party at all.
But you are going to, you hope, ally with parties from Italy and elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I met Beppe Grillo last week, and former comedian. Well, he's still a comedian.
Two of you.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
That photograph with the empty beer glass on your head, the Times used on the front page, you've got to stop doing that kind of stuff.
No, you're right. I must stop smiling, stop laughing. I must stop having opinions. I must become like the rest of the professional political class. No chance. It isn't going to happen.
Your wife says she's worried about your smoking and your drinking and your lack of sleep.
What wife in this country doesn't complain about their husband's behaviour in some way? I think that's all perfectly normal.
All right.
Back to the point. Mr Grillo comes from left of centre. I'm hoping we can do a deal with him and our group will sit bang in the middle, politically, of that Parliament with a strong Eurosceptic agenda.
Now, we've always assumed that you yourself would stand in Kent when you stand, but there's been a wicked, malicious suggestion that you might stand in Sheffield against Nick Clegg. Any chance of that?
Well, anything's possible. No, I'm not going to stand in Sheffield. You know, I'm going to stand in the southeast of England because that's where I'm from. And I think one of the things voters don't like about the big parties is the way candidates are parachuted in all over the country.
Thanet South? Can I just...
Well, it's a distinct possibility.
All right, and that's the most we're going to get from you today.
As far as I'm going this morning.
All right. For now, thank you very much indeed, Nigel Farage.